We're now in server 05 and essentially the same. We've got a function that produces a random number, but we're adding now what's called a mutation, and it's called create project, that takes the name of a project and whether it's completed and returns a string back optionally. And if we look at our resolvers, when we come down here, we can see our new definition of a mutation on the same level as a query. And here what we do is we can get access to the arguments passed. We've seen that before. We get the input, we create a new project and add it to the list of projects which we have in our array up here in projects. As we can see, we have 8 projects. So if we go into the playground, we can see that if we kind of query all the projects here, for example, we will get 8 projects that we can see in here. And now what we can do is we can create a project. So if we clear this out and type in here, we see we get our standard query mutation subscription fragments. We want a mutation, open that up, press, we can see one which is called create project. It has to take in an input, so we can see names being defined here, and we'll call that test. It has to be in double quotes. It's also expecting a completed, so we'll set that this time to true. And if we run this, we get back a string project added with this ID. Let's have a look at the code. And when we look at the code in server 05, we can see basically we're just creating a new project, giving it a random number and adding it to the projects. And we return back this string with the new ID created, which was a random number from 0 to or about 100,000. So we can see that figure there. So if we now go into projects where we only had 8 before, if we refresh, we can see we have this one added from before. So that is a mutation, and a mutation differs from a query. Although essentially they look the same and probably are the same, mutations will run in sequence, whereas queries run in parallel. So there could be a timing difference between the two. If you're mixing up mutations together, you cannot be guaranteed as with a query where they run really basically in parallel. If you were to make a mutation in the form of a query, you might find that the order would be upheaved, whereas with a mutation of several mutations, you could guarantee there'd be one after the other. So this is the new type mutation. We create a project, we pass in parameters, and we must give it, this is the resolver here, we define it up in our queries as type mutation in here. And what we're going to see now in server 06 is actually an advantage of using a so-called input type, and we'll do that in the next video.